Redditors who have served in the military, what inaccuracy depicted in military movies infuriates you the most? Firearms are loud. Very, very loud. Like damaging your hearing. Make deaf loud. You cannot talk normally during or immediately after shooting. In Iraq, my most vivid memory of my first firefight was how loud it was. It was really painful actually. M4S, M249S and a M240B shooting lots of rounds all around me. I literally thought my ears were bleeding and was effectively deaf afterwards. Black Hawk Down and Archer get it right. I fly Black Hawks. You cannot talk in the back of a freaking Black Hawk without a headset. Yes, you can scream at the top of your lungs and they might be able to hear you. A 60 has two very freaking loud GE 701 engines and not a lot of soundproofing. Lower enlisted are predominantly young as frick looking. I just want to see one movie that has 1821 soldiers that actually look like what they are representing. 3 Combat Deployment, 2008 to 2013. Former Marine here. Guns are really loud. This makes communication on the battlefield really difficult, especially in enclosed spaces. For every 10 minutes of action, there was 10 hours of planning. The constant waiting. Wait for orders. Wait for EOD. Wait for the armory. Wait for chow. Wait for the next briefing. It never ends. Not everyone has issues with combat. A lot of people don't come back really messed up. I still think a good portion of it is mentally preparing yourself for war. Crap ice and lollipops and fairy dust. Nothing goes to plan. Ever. Something will go wrong. Magazines need to be changed, damn it. Your M4 doesn't hold 100 rounds. Bullets don't make a pew pew sound. They crack unless they hit some hard surface before they fly by your head. Then it's more like a zing crack. There's some seriously fricked up things we talk about in wars and most of it could never be shown in a movie. Served in the 1st Cavalry Division 1967 to 1973. The overly dramatic death scenes. Most people in war either die in complete agony with no glory whatsoever or die instantly as though they were never even there. One thing I hate about watching military movies is everyone dies a symbolic death it seems when in reality that's not the case. Silencers do not actually silence weapons completely like they do in movies. They dull the noise level and distort the sound, making it harder to identify as a gunshot, but you can still most certainly hear them. It's not like some tiny ping sound you hear in movies. We are not fighting 24/7. Every military movie I watch it seems like non-stop fighting. I know there has to be fighting for the sake of action and all, but in reality most of the time you are not fighting and are bored out of your mind doing nothing. War, from my experience, 90% weight, 10% pure adrenaline and chaos. I'm a Vietnam veteran and I've admittedly only watched a few Vietnam films, but I hate how it seems every Vietnam film has the same everyone's fricked in the head theme and everyone is a drafty who hates to be there. PTSD was common in Vietnam, but no, everyone is like the characters from Apocalypse Now. Most soldiers in Vietnam were in fact enlisted. I think the ration was 2-1 enlisted, and the majority of us believed what we were doing there was right. Not saying dissent against the war didn't exist. It did, and it grew the longer I was there, but not everyone was against it. Then again, nobody much thought of politics of Vietnam while I was there anyway, but you get the point. Endless ammo. We all run out at some point. Not in the movies. You can't just endlessly spray your weapon like they do in Hollywood. Also, we aren't nearly as clean shaven and good looking as Hollywood stars. Most of us are ugly, sweaty, smelly, agitated men that haven't showered in weeks, months. Also, military movies tend to either portray soldiers as perfect heroes who never do wrong, or, as I said earlier, broken savages. We all try to do right, but sometimes we do wrong. It's never black and white. Also, the enemy is not some evil faceless army of morons as many war films portray, and we are not invincible. So many war movies just make the enemy out to be completely incompetent in battle, which just isn't the case. Sometimes, we frick up just as bad as they do. Also, the enemy isn't just an enemy, they are humans too. They are also fighting for what they believe to be right and can show just as much bravery barbarity as we do. They are not faceless villains. Also, I never had my finger on the trigger unless I intended to fire, so when I see soldiers in movies just casually walking with their fingers on the trigger just makes me wince, and the uniforms are often inaccurate. Sorry for the rant, but that's about it for now. Generals and colonels, and admirals and captains, are often depicted as hard-charging, dim-witted egomaniacs who have little depth of personality and are out of touch with what's really going on in their commands. In reality, senior officers are usually well-educated and well-spoken. Those I have worked with have been very intelligent and perceptive, and they usually have a talent for eliciting valuable input from those around them. The military's promotion systems aren't as broken as an outsider might be led to believe by Hollywood. For the most part, the armed services are promoting the best qualified officers to the field and flag grades. No, you listen here, Sergeant. You shoot those sick children and that's an order, slams down phone. Almost every single movie I've seen with guns, rifles in it, whether it was a military movie or not, all seem to break the rule that a mag can only hold so many bullets. There are too many movies where people will fire 50 bullets out of a handgun and somehow never had to change a mag. In some movies where they do actually reload, it's unrealistically fast and inaccurate. Which is frustrating, because quickly changing mags is one of the few bad butt skills the army left me with. It really annoys me to see explosions that are way too Hollywood. Grenades don't set people on fire, claymores don't spark, and for frick's sake 40mm rounds, and most rockets, have a minimum arming distance. Not specific to military movies, but how many times can you charge dong cycle a weapon before rounds start popping out? 1. It's 1. Unless you're using an M2, then it's twice. Or was that the MK-19? Crap, I can't remember now. The casual conversations on helicopters. Whole mission briefings on the helicopter right before they land. Any talking on a helicopter without a headset. Helicopters allowed. I crew UH-60s for the army, and I have to wear 2 sets of hearing protection at all times while the aircraft is operating. On the occasions where I need to talk to a passenger or someone not on a headset, I have to literally scream right into their ear from point blank range, and they still barely hear me. So the calm and quiet conversations I see in movies all the time really ruins my immersion. This is something that really made me love Arrival. The helicopter was incredibly loud and the script made a point of having the character learn how she had to use the headset. It also worked really as a mood device, but dang, the sound mixing and engineering in that movie was interesting. I have a few. Bad guys don't always miss. Our wives don't always cheat on us when we are gone. We drink a lot more than they think. We drink a lot more than they think. Yeah, it's safe to assume that every Cohen Jr. enlisted soldier is drunk unless otherwise noted. Former Navy enlisted. The smart but belligerent young enlisted who gets asked to fix the problem when he rushes in. Yeah, that guy. That guy isn't anywhere near anyone who gives a rat's butt about his ideas because he has been shuffled down to the crap jobs for being cocky long ago. This is the military, where you follow orders first and challenge later after the shooting is done, if at all. You have a great idea? Pass it on to your next level in the chain of command. If it is a winner, it will get to the right ears, but you do not just go stomping up and shout it at the officer in charge. I had good, bad, and indifferent bosses in my short years in the service, but I always knew someone I could pass along ideas to if I had them, and even got commended once or twice after for being right. In the end, we were all working on making crap go right, and the best way to do that was to do the job given as best you could from E1 to 09. In a real crisis, you would see a lot of quiet men and women working hard and paying attention. Just pisses me off when the smartest busts in and in the end he's getting medals and promotions and crap while his bosses are being shuffled off like incompetent losers. Next time, have a chief take 10 minutes to meticulously explain why his idea is so dumb it could only have come from a life form with no identifiable brain, with specific real-world examples, historic references, and a number of explicit descriptions of his familial relations back a few generations before he is thrown in the brig while everyone else goes back to work and saves the fricking ship. I hate that the military is kind of a catch-all backstory for any character that is supposed to be a badass. Like, some guy spends a few years in the military and then gets out and goes back to his hometown, and he has all the training he needs to single-handedly take on his town's army of drug dealers, corrupt cops, whatever. I'm sure there are some special forces types that might fit that profile, but most of us get out of the military and we're really good at, like, PowerPoint and crap. The vast majority of the military is made up of just regular but people who went to boot camp. They might be able to knock out a few more push-ups than the average civilian, but most of us spend an average day in the military looking at screens or driving trucks or filling out paperwork, like everyone else. I was in military intelligence, end of Cold War. I can analyze the frick out of reports, extrapolate troop movements, even gather some of my own intelligence in the right circumstances. I can even shoot my M16A2 pretty well. I'd know frick all about taking down a drug ring, mob boss, etc. I've posted this before, but it's worth saying again. For me, all the inaccuracy is about uniforms, weapons, tactics, ranks, facial hair, etc. etc. Nothing bothers me as much as the inaccurate way soldiers are depicted. Generally, they aren't made out to be real people. They are either superhero ninja badasses, or broken vulnerable disadvantaged kids who've been taken advantage of, or psychotic killers without brains or consciences. The fact of the matter is, soldiers are just people, a cross-section of society, with all, good and bad, that it entails. Unfortunately, many movies can't seem to figure that out, mostly, I think, because they are products of a society that has very little familiarity with the military they pay so much for and send to far-flung places on the map to do things they'd rather not know or think about. I think Generation Kill did a good job depicting the way people in the military actually talk to each other. I am an avionics mechanic in the Air Force. In the movie Con Air they take the transponder from the cargo plane and put it in a Cessna, which leads to the FBI following the wrong plane. However, what they really put in the Cessna was just the APX-72 control panel. In no way would it transmit anything on its own, even with the battery they wired to it. This always bugged me. That is an incredibly specific one. I've said this before and I'll say it again, not everyone in the army comes from a small town no one's ever heard of. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of dudes like that, but there's also plenty of people from New York, Baltimore, Cleveland, Dallas, Los Angeles, Boston, Miami, Chicago. I mean, not all of us are pickup driving, tobacco chewing rednecks engaged to our high school sweetheart. Heck, my company had guys from at least 4 or 5 different countries. Also, that movie Stop Loss, yeah, frick that movie, Home of the Brave 2. Also, don't ask a veteran if the guy who told you he was in the special forces was actually in the SF, because the answer is always number. Seriously, think about it. Special operations chooses from a very specific type of soldier with a very specific type of personality. The type of soldier with a type of personality who doesn't sit on Xbox Live bragging about being SF. Never once saw a military movie where the new guy was approached to join Amway or some other MLM scam within 10 minutes of people meeting him. That crap was like a cancer when I was in. Uniforms and customs and courtesies. Every single thing you would ever need to know is a Google search away, yet they routinely show men and women that are simply egregious. Collars worn a weird way, women's hair touching a collar, flashy jewelry, salutes where their hand is jacked up, etc. In the real world, if you are even close to any of that, an E9 will swoop down and make your life a living heck for as long as they want. It's just laziness on the part of the film crew. So many times, you see a 3-4 star general walking around with the cover on indoors. You see hair and facial hair out of regs. You see people in blues in the most unlikely situations. I know it's really minor, but little uniform violations really annoy me. Things like missing patches, badges in the wrong place, untucked bootlaces, etc. It's not that hard to comply to uniform standards. It seems lazy to me for a director to not take the 10 minutes he would need to figure all this stuff out. Little uniform violations really annoy me. That's what took me right the frick out of Home of the Brave within the first 10 minutes. The actual suckiness of the rest of the movie walked me around the corner and beat my butt. When military grade means the absolute best and indestructible. In reality, military grade means the lowest bidder made this and it sucks and we overpaid for it. I work for a company making bulletproof windows for Humvees and MRAPs. You can definitely tell we were the lowest bidder. The entire movie that is The Hurt Locker. I don't have enough time in my day to explain that giant pile of steaming horseshit. Language. Nkos aren't called sir. A female officer isn't called sir. Marines aren't soldiers. The list goes on and on. Saluting without a cover on. Indoors. Uniforms. Jesus frick. Look at Google for 10 minutes. So I'm normally a roll with it person when it comes to this stuff, but I should note I can't watch much about the current conflict. However, the single most enraging thing that made me yell at the screen constantly, the first G.I. Joe movie. Duke's character is supposed to be a major, and wear captain's bars, or maybe vice versa. It peed me off every time he got on the screen. Such a small thing that I'm sure someone in props thought was funny. The vast majority of people who served are not combat vets. Even deployed most of us, support folks, are not in that much danger. The vast majority of us have civilian equivalent jobs. There are as many dumbasses and pieces of crap in the military as there are in civilian life. Overall the pay for military is good. Some jobs it's not when all things are considered. Mainly combat jobs. It's hard to nail down just one, but I'll mention one that hasn't been mentioned yet. The talking. Apparently everyone in the military has a pretty crappy fake sounding southern accent and doesn't know the difference between the letter O and the number 0. Along with the talking comes the lingo. A member of the Marine Corps is not a soldier. A member of the Navy is not an airman. A member of the Army is not a sailor. A member of the Air Force is not a Marine. Here, I'll make it simple. Army equals soldier. Marines equals Marine. Navy equals sailor. Air Force equals airman. Also, over and out on the radio. Just, why? The other thing they frick up is unit sizes. I can't remember the exact movie. It was some direct-to-TV sci-fi channel style balls. But the captain asks the general to give him a platoon to go rescue some POWs. The general says I can't spare a platoon. I can only give you a brigade. A platoon is around 25-50 men. A brigade is 3 or more battalions, or around 2,000 men. Grenades. There is not a huge explosion that throws people all over. Medium bang and lots of nasty little chunks of metal that shred. That's what I loved about Lone Survivor. No fire, why big explosions? This will probably get downvoted to crap for answering the complete opposite of the question, but I saw the scene in World War Z that was astoundingly accurate. On the naval ship they escape on, there's a 5-minute conversation and in the background there's some sailor putting gravy on his mashed potatoes. Even during a zombie apocalypse. Freaking piece of crap airedales have nothing better to do than hold up the chow line by precisely gravying their third helping of potatoes. But it's flight quarters so we have to skip the line. Everyone's a freaking officer. The movies shows that recognize the existence of enlisted still make it out to be a 2-1 officer to enlisted ratio. Aside from the enlisted versus office assault, the organization that such a top heavy scheme would have makes no sense. Think Stargate SG-1. For example, there is no way that a 4-man team would include both a colonel and a major. At most, there would be a sergeant in charge of that team, and even that is freaking generous. Cole O'Neill would be riding a desk and probably wouldn't even ever see the Stargate, let alone walk through it. That's always bothered me on Stargate. On the other hand, if there is a firefight on Earth they send SG-1 including the archaeologist. You almost never hear about logistics when any kind of mission is being planned. Okay, you guys go here and kill those guys and then blow that crap up and that's it. There are literally hundreds of details that need to be worked out for any mission. I realize it would be boring to go through all of that, but it should at least be referenced. My logisticians are a humorless lot. They know if my campaign fails, they are the first ones I will slay. Alexander the Great. Got him right. Amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. Served 25 years in the Legio 9 Hispana. I gotta say, the depiction of Roman military combat and attire in Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2000 was rather appalling. For one thing, we never used napalm, so Lord knows how the opening battle featured exploding fireballs. I mean the Byzantines had Greek fire, but that wouldn't show up until much later. Also, how the heck did Maximus gallop from the Iberian Peninsula back to Central Europe in a day? He sets off with a bleeding wound and arrives back home, 300 miles away, still bleeding. I'll say this much though, the frost really does make the blade stick. 99.8% of military movies are so terrible fact-wise that I've learned to just pretend I don't know anything and enjoy the story. How they wear the uniform in most movies. I always see the collar up and velcroed, not a word, and you only do that when you put on body armor that has a neck guard which rubs your neck. Also, wrong patches in the wrong place. Pretty much any movie that acts like all the soldiers are heroes and if they are dying they say crap like give this to my son who dead. No, really those that get injured freaking cry and display pain worse than you can imagine, especially if they know they are not gonna make it. Also, if you are in a firefight and your best friend next to you gets shot in the head, you don't stop shooting to dress the wound. Only the medic stops shooting to take care of someone injured. We are trained to never cease firing whatsoever to help someone due to the fact that the enemy could advance and possibly overrun us if certain weapons stop firing. It could be one person dies, or an entire platoon. We choose the one overall. Every movie when they are patrolling or walking somewhere, they are way too close to each other and having a goddamn loud butt conversation. Shut the frick up and spread out. That SOF units are always 100% on ready to kill 100% of the time, and that they are either complete professionals or they break from command and go rogue all while getting away with it. You will find so much debauchery and sarcastic cynicism. Nothing is really taken seriously, unless it needs to be. Oh, and the other big thing, that special forces units operate on their own, without any help. SEALs and GBs both deploy with pretty big attachments of support guys that operators depend on, but never get referenced. A 100% legit conversation I had with a JTF2 operator. Those Delta Force buttholes ate all the ice cream. Double quote. Kinda took the bloom off the rose. Pretty much anything involving fixed wing aircraft. How they fly, capabilities, weapons used, tactics, weapons used against them, etc. Absolutely freaking absurd. Case in point, behind enemy lines. That scene when Owen Wilson is flying a Hornet and gets shot at by a SAM. Think it was in SAR 6 or something, would have to look back. But the thing is freaking chasing him around for 5 minutes doing loops and flying through tunnels and crap. Not a freaking chance. Those missiles are going supersonic and while they can pull more G's than a fighter jet, at that speed it looks like more of a gradual curve. If it misses the first time, it's gone. That every person in the military is not a hard charging war machine. I am 6 feet 3, weigh 215 pounds, 95 kilograms ish for our metric friends and can shoot the eye out of a sparrow at 50 yards /48 m ish. However, I was an air traffic controller in the army. I never loaded around into my M16 in Afghanistan. I literally worked an 8-hour shift in an air traffic control tower every night. I trained other air traffic controllers. We lived in armored, air-conditioned shipping containers and played basketball and ping pong in our off time. I took a shower every day. No hot water but still. I have friends who had crap deployments and got shot at and mortared every day. I have more friends who sat in an office or did some other menial task every day for 12 hours a day while in a hot dusty room in a foreign country. ATC. Former 35D here. I fixed Wiles equipment when it fell apart cause you breathed on it wrong. Well, I tried. Anyway, okay. I did my best to keep the magic smoke inside the goddamn radar, cussing you guys the whole way. Not what you asked, but what I've decided to answer. 2 scenes movies that I've found incredibly accurate. 1. In Hacksaw Ridge. When the protagonist gets to boot camp and Vince Vaughn comes in, sure it's a little out of place and overdone, but I can almost guarantee everyone who has been through military indoctrination has had that instructor who welcomed everyone with screaming and managed to assign a couple of nicknames in the first instant of meeting everyone. Yes, it made me giggle when I watched it on screen, but it also made me flash back to my first week in the military. The nickname was Dutch Oven and no, it wasn't me. 2. Captain Phillips was filmed in an actual destroyer. Yes, the passageways are that narrow and the ladders are that steep, and they got all but one of the standard commands correct. It helps when actual US sailors are playing some of the roles. Former Navy nuclear reactor operator here. One doesn't have a fight scene next to a topper reactor and expect to avoid death by radiation sickness poisoning. Thank you. Current Navy nuclear operator. Literally anything to do with nuclear power or naval combat. Regardless of what's going on, we're still just taking logs. Hate it when a subordinate, usually enlisted, talks back to a high-ranking officer and makes him or do something out of the ordinary because it will save the mission. That crap rarely happens. We usually just shut the frick up and follow instructions. Sure, if something is dangerous we speak up, but always respectfully. Discipline among the soldiers. Yes, among your average soldiers the discipline isn't over the top. But a lot of movies will feature some highly specialized unit that will have little to no respect for rank or any level of professionalism. Also, every highly trained and elite soldier I have met has been very calm, professional and polite. They have never been the show-off, braggart and in-your-face butthole movies tend to feature. When you are that highly trained you don't need to prove something to everybody. Yes, among others who are trained as well as you are you might compete. But the average soldier or civilian can't even compare and they know it, so there is no reason to show off. Also, commanders complaining something to the effect of that soldier thinks too much, implying that the military wants mindless troops that follow orders without question or thought. This one really pisses me off. The US military wants intelligent soldiers. There is a reason why they pay for and provide a variety of ways for soldiers to get more education. Furthermore, while I was in basic we had several classes on what constitutes an illegal order, how to tell an officer that you can't follow their order and how to report illegal orders. 8 years US Army. I was a mechanic at a hospital unit for the majority, but I met more than a few hardcore badass soldiers in my time. My boyfriend was an armorer in the army. The thing that irritates him the most is the inaccuracies on the weapons. That type of gun can't do that, that's not a standard weapon in the army. What the frick, that's not how bombs work. At all. Gasoline explosions. Good, you'd swear a battlefield was one giant pile of gas cans, napalm notwithstanding. Spielberg and Hanks have gotten weapons and explosions right, and the movie Fury, aircraft scenes. Frick, I'd fire 95% of the CGI directors in Hollywood if possible. They have aircraft doing impossible moves, or cram the screen full of them. Naval scenes. The whole fleet occupying about 1 square mile of ocean. Or the only battleships bombarding islands were Iowa-class BBs. The fast BBs stayed with the carriers to provide AA defense. The OBS, think Pearl Harbor ships, were used mainly for shore bombardment. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.